Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about solving systems of equations, and the first thing that we're going to do in section 6.1 is solve by using substitution. So let's talk about solving by substitution. This is something that you've maybe done before. I would imagine that you probably have. And so solving by substitution means, obviously we're substituting, that's the process, but to do that we need to solve for one variable first. And then substitute it in to solve the system. So we find what x is equal to, we sub that back in to eliminate one of the variables, to take away one of the other variables, so we've got nothing but x's, for example, and then we can solve the system by finding a number and plugging it back in. Alright, so it's best to see how it works. Let's do an example. Here they give us two equations, and what they're going to do is they're going to group the equations together with this bracket, this brace here. And so what we're going to do first is we're going to solve for one of the variables. Notice I've got an x and a y and an x and a y. And so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to solve one of these equations first. And so if I just kind of step off to the side here, I'm going to say y is equal to 4 minus x. So I just subtracted x from both sides, and I'm trying to keep the variable positive, basically. And so then, now I know what y equals. It's 4 minus x. And so what I'm going to do is, I'm going to take that result, and I'm going to put it in for y. And so my new equation is going to be x minus, and then 4 minus x equals 2. And so what I end up with is x minus 4. And seemingly I have x minus x. Well, remember, this is an expression, so it's really going to be like this. So plus x equals 2. And so then I have 2x minus 4 equals 2. Add 4. 2x equals 6. So x equals 3. Well, that's one part of it. The system is actually solving for both of the parts. And so when I solve back, I plug back in, y is equal to 4 minus x. Now, I know what x is equal to. Y is equal to 4 minus 3. Y is equal to 1. So what's my solution? It's an ordered pair. 3, comma, 1. That's my solution. Now, to check it, I'd plug it back into both equations. And so, is 3 plus 1 equal to 4? Yes. Is 3 minus 1 equal to 2? Yes. So I plugged it back into both original equations to check to see if it worked, and it does, so we're good. So let's solve an example here that involves a solution set that's going to have two different solutions. How do I know it's going to have two different solutions? Well, my hunch tells me, I've got this x squared here, so in a quadratic, we end up with that two solution case. And so x squared plus 4x minus y equals 7, and 2x minus y equals negative 1. So how do we approach something like this? We're still using substitution, and so I want to try to solve the one that's going to give me something pretty simple, or simpler than the other one. So I'm going to solve this 2x minus y equals negative 1. So 2x minus y equals negative 1. And I'm going to solve for y, so I can plug it back in. How did I choose y? Well, the x squared, this business, if I solved for x, I'd end up having a bunch of different things to plug it, and I'd have to square it. So I'm going to solve for y because I only have the 1 here. So let's do a little bit of solving. If I add 1 to both sides, and I add y to both sides, so I'm basically moving this one over and moving the y over there. So I've got 2x plus 1 equals y. That's what I'm going to end up solving back in up, or subbing back in up here. And so the 2x plus 1 is going to go in for y. Let's rewrite. So now my equation is x squared plus 4x minus 2x plus 1 equals 7. And so now that I've got x squared plus 4x minus 2x plus 1 equals 7, I'm going to rewrite because I notice I have a quadratic here, and so by having a quadratic, it's going to allow me to do the normal things that I do to solve a quadratic, factoring, etc. X squared plus 4x minus 2x minus 1 equals 7. I want to set it equal to 0, so I'll subtract 7 from both sides and also rewrite this middle part. So x squared plus 2x minus 8 equals 0. Now that I have all this worked out, I'm going to factor this, or quadratic formula, however you got to do it, to solve for that x. And so x is going to be x minus 4, sorry, plus 4, and x minus 2. Trying to get my eraser out here. So x plus 4, there we go, x minus 2. And so x can be equal to negative 4, or x can be positive 2. Well, that gives me two solutions. And so if I plug them back in up here to 2x minus y, I can either have 2 times minus 4 minus y equals negative 1. So minus 8 minus y equals negative 1. Negative y equals 7. So y is negative 7. So that would go with x equals 4. So one solution, write it in blue, is negative 4, negative 7. My other solution is going to be if I plugged in x equals 2, so 2 times 2 minus y equals negative 1. 4 minus y equals negative 1. Negative y equals negative 5, so y equals 5. So my other solution is going to be x is 2, y is 5. Okay, and I could plug those back in to make sure that they work. So if I plugged in negative 4, so 2 times negative 4 would be negative 8 minus a negative 7, so plus 7 would be negative 1. That one checks out. 2 times 2 is 4, minus 5 would be negative 1, and so this one checks out as well. That's when I've got two solutions. Plug them back in, they both work. All right, so let's do one more case. No real solutions. Solve the system by substitution. Negative x plus y equals 4, and x squared plus y equals 3. So what I'll do is, I'm going to solve this one for y, and so y equals 4 plus x, and all I did was add x to both sides. Okay, so y equals 4 plus x. I'll use that to sub into this equation. How did I know to do that? Well, I want to try to avoid the x squared, right? I want to try to find something that's going to be easy to sub back in. And so here I've got x squared plus 4 plus x squared plus 4 plus x equals 3. Do a little bit of a rewrite. X squared plus x. And if I subtract 3, because it's a quadratic, I want it equal to 0. And this would be plus 1 equals 0. And so let's just say for a second, I'm trying to figure out something that's going to multiply to 1 and add to 1, so I don't really see anything. So I'm going to do quadratic formula. So x is equal to negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 1 squared minus 4 times a, which is the coefficient down here, times 1, 2a, so over 2. Negative 1 plus or minus the square root of negative 3, because I have 1 minus 4 would be negative 3, and I've got 2. Well, this right here, I'm even going to circle it in a little red color here. This right here is an imaginary answer, so no real solutions. Because if even I have negative 1, even if I add it or even if I subtract it, still going to have a non-real solution, an imaginary solution. So we have no real solutions for this system. That's how it works, guys. Okay, so check out what you've got. Solve for one, sub back in. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.